Hour 2 Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Bryan Hayes, O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles, McLennan. My long-awaited Maple Leaf list, the 5 worst trades in Maple Leaf history. According to me, everyone's got a different viewpoint. Doogie tweeted out earlier this afternoon just asking people how they would answer that question. Everyone's got different answers, and I'm not at all surprised by that. But I'll get to mine later this afternoon. Ray Ferraro coming up here in a moment. The NHL is dark today. No games today in the NHL. U.S. Thanksgiving. But Ray Ferraro will join us here in a moment. Catch up with Ray and get his take on where he thinks the Leafs are at, through, 22 games now in the season, and the likelihood that Matthews will return on Saturday. Matthew Nyes, I believe, will return on Saturday, but Bobby McMahon is likely coming out of the lineup. Another injury last night.
It's time to get the boys
Domi.
back together. Mm-hmm. It's time to get the band back together. The guys have – it's an incredible, a galvanized – everyone says this could be a galvanized – it was. Everybody came together. Everybody contributed, and they got the job done. Marner, Nylander, unbelievable. Goaltending, unbelievable. The way the defense played. But now it's time to just get it – it's time to do it a different way now. Get the team back together.
Yeah, get the pros back up there. And
yes. Because
the more and more you play – the more opportunity you have to see why guys are playing at a different level, right? You can get one-offs where you say, I really like that guy. He played well. And then over time, you're like, that looks closer to an American Hockey League player, you know, and you kind of realize it. And you realize why the pros are pros.
Takes about a week, and you figure out where you should be playing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But you can do it short-term because you ask guys to – they play on adrenaline, they punch above their weight, but all of a sudden you're 2 weeks into it, you're like, yeah, there's a reason why that guy's been an AHL guy. Now, he might be a young guy that still needs some seasoning that you're, again, calling up prematurely because of the situation you're in. Is Domi close? He's
not even on the trip, to my knowledge, Noodles.
Right.
He's not playing. David Camp is not on the trip. He's not playing. They're not returning on Saturday.
Yeah, Camp is a guy that I don't think that, respectfully, that they would miss as much. Domi, now you start creeping into a guy who plays in your top 6 to 9, who brings a little different dynamic. Nyes, obviously, Matthews for sure. We know that. Mm-hmm. But the other guys those are the plug-and-play guys, where you can test your depth or move guys around and see what it is. But when you start to run thin on those guys, that's where you're concerned about, because – That's what's happening now is with McMahon out, who's coming in, technically.
Right, and you look at a scenario like last night where McMahon had to leave and they're down to 11 forwards. You got to play guys in a game where you're chasing it, and I thought Florida was certainly better than the Leafs last night. I didn't think the Leafs were awful. I just thought Florida came out quick. They got on them. They were aggressive. I felt a little bit for Stolarz because it was a big game for him. And, I didn't think he played poorly, but he wasn't great. He blamed himself on that first goal in particular. And Bob was really good at the other end, and that was the guy. He was the number one. You were the backup. And Bob, put on a clinic last night. He wasn't tested a ton. But he played well. Yeah. Yes, he played well, and he did what you would expect out of a star goaltender.
You think they're so tight in the league, Hayes? You'd be surprised how quickly it can go from – feeling good, we're grooving, to even if you're a good team like the Florida Panthers, I'm sure Paul Maurice's mindset, going into that game is, we better pick one off here. There could, it doesn't take long for the mindset of, we better get it together here or we could be in trouble. You know what I mean? That's how close.
Absolutely.
That's how close the East and the West is.
They had lost 6 of 7, and there was a time where they were. 5-6 points ahead of everybody?
And Jamie, we've been saying it the last 5 years, a 2-week swing, positive or negative, near the end of the season, you have time to recover now. But March, you have this negative swing, it could cost you the playoffs.
100%. With how things are, the parity in the league, we actually focus on the Atlantic. And, Hayes, your Buffalo Sabres have all of a sudden thrown themselves back into the mix. Ottawa's won 2 in a row. Now all of a sudden you're looking the spread is 5 points, 7 points from top to bottom type of thing. And you give yourself a bad 5 games, all of a sudden you're on the wrong end of something not good.
100%. You can visualize it still early in the season, too, of turning things around. And you could look at it, from an individual standpoint, look at the goaltending here. Stolarz doesn't play for a week and a half, then loses. Now I'm like, okay, I guess Wall will play Saturday night. If he plays well, is he your guy now? He's the number one. It can happen quickly,
it does.
especially when you're dealing with tandems. And Stolarz has been great this year. And they didn't lose because of him last night, but individual battles happen quickly too, and they twist and turn as the season goes on. So again, the NHL is not in action today. Steps aside for the NFL, but tons of games tomorrow, tons of games throughout the weekend. And to look ahead to those and look back on what happened last night and what's going on around the NHL, we're joined now on the Maple Toyota Hotline by our good friend Ray Ferraro. What's happening, Ray?
Sitting on a couch watching football.
Yes. Giants, Cowboys. What a ball game.
Oh. Well, I just said to Cammie, I go, look at this. Like, this is dreadful. Like, this sucks.
But you're going to watch it. You're going to watch it.
You bet. Oh, I'm not moving off the couch. You bet.
It's amazing.
The first game was good, though.
Yeah, it was. It was.
I didn't realize 30 seconds could end a coaching career, but it looks like that's not going to go well for that dude in Chicago.
Eberflus is a guy that I think that market had been turning on, pretty signidightly anyway. And when
Twitter
you lose,
is like eating them alive. Like,
It was.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like
It's
you
bad.
guys know me. I watch football the least out of the four of us. And I'm sitting there yelling at the screen going, what the hell is going on here? I look like Al's brother running the play back there. I don't know what was going on.
I know.
And I'm going, he's out of time. He's out of time. And there was no timeouts. There was nothing. And I don't know. It was
it's
just
the
ridiculous.
worst thing that can happen to an NFL coach. If your clock management, if a game ends and you have a timeout, like you're toast.
It's
You
pro
cannot
sports
do it.
if you look disorganized, period. It's the worst thing possible.
Especially on national TV like that.
Yes.
when they brought the camera back to him, once the pass was incomplete, and he was looking around like what just happened? Like, do we not have more time? And
that's where you go to the underpants cam, Ray. That's where you go right to the underpants cam.
Yeah.
And you got to fill up on line one right there.
That's a sports Emmy. That's a sports Emmy at 4K. You get that. You get that camera going. That's Bob Costas presenting it to you.
Eberflus would have set a record, and you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, it's good to have you on, and we'll be tracking that game reluctantly, Giants Cowboys, and should have a good game tonight. But we were talking about the Leafs obviously, and they lost last night, and that one. Now you look back on it, it kind of made a lot of sense. Like Florida was waiting for them, and they had been playing poorly and losing a bunch of games. And I'm curious if you've been in a situation at any point in your career like the Leafs have been in the last 8 to 10 games where guys are dropping like flies, and Bobby McMahon got hurt last night. He left the game. They're playing – half their lineup should be in the American Hockey League right now.
Yeah, I think anybody that, like all of us, played for a long time, and you get to a certain point and you're like, we have no players. Like they call somebody up and somebody else gets hurt. And pretty soon you have a fourth line guy playing on your power play, and you're like, well, he's upright, and we got to have 5 guys out there. There's a certain point where I think you try to hang on as best as you can till you can get some people back healthy. That game last night, this is why I never really looked too much into if a team, say Toronto and Florida, match up in the playoffs somewhere along the line, and you start quoting the season series. It doesn't take into consideration what's happened at that time. Like, that's not the Leafs last night. That's just a bunch of guys wearing the Leafs jerseys. And Florida had given up 20 goals in 4 games. And they had a really hard, like a battle drill practice and a day off. Like, you knew they were going to be probably pretty sharp. And so that almost becomes like a schedule loss. Like, you just do the best you can, and man, if you can get out of there with a point, that would be awesome. So that doesn't really I don't put too much emphasis into stuff like that, because it's like sometimes in the long year you're going to get to a game and realistically you don't have a chance. Now you might win it, but more often than not you don't have a chance.
Ray, I'm going to ask you this for the 5th year in a row, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Like you just said, the possibility of Toronto meeting Florida. Does Toronto kind of, with Berube and the different decor, do you see anything different? Probably 5 years in a row I've asked you that.
Yeah, but this year I think I do. But what I see different is they seem to be able to win a game that maybe they wouldn't have won in the past. Mm-hmm. They can win like a low event game. They seem a little more patient. The D has played really well, and Tanev is a really interesting guy to me because it doesn't really matter what type of partner you play him with. He seems to make that pair better, and so he doesn't. I don't even care if he's lost a half a step because he doesn't go anywhere anyway. Like he's never racing up and down the ice. He's really confident, so he doesn't give too much room. So his skating he doesn't get burned out wide. And he's in the way all the time. Timmins has been a really nice addition. Like I remember when that kid was with the World Junior team, and he was really good, and then he got a really bad concussion, and he got traded, and then he kind of fell off the map. But he always always back to then, he was a player of good pedigree. And unfortunately, it's taken him a long time, but this is found money for the Leafs. Ekman Larsson had he had a different contract, he would have still been in Vancouver. But they couldn't pay him $7 million. And he was hurt. He goes to Florida, wins a cup, and now you got another like a legit player. So I do think they're different. I like to see them when they get all back healthy and see what it all looks like and how it all comes together. But they look like a team that could grind out a series. And they weren't far from it last year, right? They got to Game 7. They lose 2-1. Like, they weren't far from it. And so this has been forever in the making. I still don't know if it's enough, but I do think they're a little different.
So we talked about the D, Ray. Let's look up front. And, we know the core four when they're healthy. Obviously, Matthews is on the road to recovery, probably play Saturday. But, outside of that, there's been opportunity for some young players to push through. And I've circled a guy like Nick Robertson, who's gotten opportunity, especially with injuries and getting pushed around the lineup. What do you make of a young guy who, trying to find an everyday spot, but he can't find that consistency? Is there something missing from his game? Because it doesn't seem like it's opportunity now. It just seems like execution.
You know what? As you know, Noodles, I'm out here in Vancouver, right? And so Nils Höglander scores 24 goals last year. I think all of them at 5-on-5. He's got 4 goals in his last 39 games, like going back to last year. And he and Robertson kind of remind me of the position they're in right now. And Höglander's ice time's getting less and less. I think he played like 8-9 minutes over the weekend twice, or over the last couple games twice. It's like they've just totally shot their own confidence. And we know how it happens, right? You play a little poorly, you lose a little ice, you lose a little roll. Now you start to press. The more you press, the worse it gets. And then pretty soon the coach looks at you in a certain way that you feel like the whole focus of the game is on you. Every mistake you make is way worse than everybody else's. That's not the case, but you've now ground yourself down to dust. And so it's easy to say, you got to find your confidence, but we all know, like, that's really, really hard. Like, maybe Robertson can never find it there. Like, maybe he can't. And maybe he's got to go somewhere else to even have a chance to find it, because right now it looks like he never looks dangerous, right? He looks like just a guy out there. And if he's going to play, they can talk about his defensive stuff all they want. He's got to generate chances, and he's got to finish a few of them. And he just doesn't even generate the chance right now.
Exactly. He doesn't look comfortable. He doesn't look confident. He had a 2-on-1 last night that he basically skated into.
Turned into a backhand. From a bad angle.
He had a 100-foot 2-on-1. That's the play, right?
Yeah.
And he ended up and he shoveled a backhander at the Conn Smythe winner. Like, that's probably not going in.
No. That's a weird play, man. Like, that's a play. I mean, you guys can speak to it. You were in the NHL, but that's one. And I know practice players, blah, blah, blah. And in practice, he rips that under the bar or makes a great pass. He just gets under the lights right now. He can't do it. And it's a terrible
feeling. It's a terrible feeling, too, like, for the player. Like, he goes back to the bench. At least we never had to look at the tablet. Like, they got those stupid tablets there. You grab one and you're going to throw up on it when you look at it. Like, it must be brutal to sit there and look at it and go, what was that?
No
kidding.
That's
me.
Like, I hadn't thought of that, like, someone, Mark Savard, man, hey, here's the tablet. Take a look at that. What were you thinking?
Yeah.
That I hadn't thought of that, going back to the bench and having to review your own play. That's
tough if Chief hands it to you.
Yeah,
like that's
the guy
if he lays it on your shoulder when you're sitting there and goes, "Hey, I got something for you." It's that last play. Like, that's where you
All right, let me take it a step further. What if Spencer Carberry hands an iPad to Tom Wilson last night and goes, "Go bring that over to Charlie Lingren and ask him to take a look at that goal he scored on his
Noodles,
own net."
have you ever done that? Did you ever do that?
No, I've had some of the worst goals ever go in on me, so I'm not sitting on my high horse. I have not done that, especially at the pro level. But I said at the start of the show, Ray, I'm so happy he won, because what it'll be. The minute he walks on the plane, guys will just be chewing him out. Here's the other thing. He shot it over the glass after it went in the net. I don't know if he got a 2-minute delay of game penalty.
He should have got a penalty for that. Wouldn't that have been awesome?
Not delay a game. The play was over, but it could have been unsportsmanlike.
Unsportsmanlike.
Right, sorry, yeah.
But there is a penalty for it. But do you not think the ref must have looked at him and went, "You poor bugger"?
I'll give it to you. What a scene.
Who got the goal for that? Oh, Braden Point.
Yeah, he got his hat-trick goal. That was his hat-trick goal.
Wow. How about that? Yeah, I've had a hattie before.
That's a great trivia question. What a hat trick.
But in today's world, somebody would be like, well, we got to look into this guy's gambling history or something, like how something so weird like that happens. For like, okay, maybe it just, like Bill Buckner back in the day. You would wonder if any of these guys had the Pete Rose. They're betting on games. Like, that was just a ridiculous play. I felt bad for Lingren because the puck jumped up at the last second. Like, it's just an innocent
But it was
mistake.
right in the middle of the net.
He buried it hard too.
Buried that.
Yeah, you're not fooling around. If you got a chance, put it away.
Yeah, he sure did last night.
Good. He's pretty good with the puck too.
Very good. Yeah, he is.
Oops.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the goaltending position, I'm sure you've been having these conversations about Canada and the Four Nations face-off and even the Olympics in a year from now. It's not like someone's going to miraculously show up between now and February 2026. Do you have where do you stand on that, Ray? Because it's such an extreme. You look at the forward group, you look at the defense, and then you get to the goaltending. It's a pretty extreme drop-off considering what Canada's generally used to.
Yeah, there's there's not any path that you look at and go, yeah, that's the one. Feel great about it. But I know, of all the goalies that get their names kicked around a little bit, like Mackenzie Blackwood was there for a while. What did he make 7 saves last night, Noodles? The game you were doing?
What a weird game that was, man.
He was in a lawn chair like the whole game. Like Ottawa had one shot in the third period, and they scored on it. Like, it was just the weirdest game for him. And then at the other end, like, that's the Allmark they kind of been hoping would show up, because Ottawa, they sleptwalked. They were just very opportunistic. But you're right. Like, I like Blackwood as a goaltender. I think there would be a market for him at the deadline. If Colorado better be looking at him, there's other few teams that should be looking at him based on how much he makes and what his potential is. But that was the weirdest game last night for him.
But he's pulled himself out of this conversation, right? Like, to me, it's like it's Hill and Binnington and Talbot. I think it would be. Maybe Logan Thompson too, but I mean, those are, to me, are like the 4 guys. And wouldn't it be something if 2 of the 3 guys were Hill and Thompson?
Right.
Like, that would be pretty crazy. That Vegas got Thompson for nothing. He was undrafted. They signed him as a free agent, and Hill they got for a draft pick from San Jose. But that's kind of who I don't see. I don't really see any other options. Do you guys?
Ray, I think it's crazy that other people think that, who cares who's in net because the other guys are so good, McDavid and McKinnon. Sochi, they won games 2-1, did they not? Like, I think the goaltending position is so important, man. So important.
Well, it is, because in Sochi, They won 2-1. Carey Price had to make a blocker save on the Salo, the defenseman, the right-handed shot who could bring the puck. He made an unbelievable blocker save, and I think he only had 16 shots, something like that. But you needed that save at the right time. I don't know how you guys feel. I'm kind of the other way when it comes to these goalies. Like, I've said it before, Ray. 7 out of 10 have seven out of 10 last Stanley Cup winners have been Canadian goaltenders. They just have to be good enough and good in that situation. But if you're thinking of it that way, I'm more leaning legacy. Then I'm going Bennington, maybe Kemper, and Marc-Andre Fleury. Because Fleury's a guy I want him around. He's not going to be wearing a ball cap anyways as the third goalie. But I want legacy guys and guys who are good in the room, guys who can have that experience, wouldn't panic at any situation. But you're right. The fact that we're still having these conversations, could be Hill, could be this, could be that, hey, Logan Thompson, it's not. They're having a tougher time in the States because they got so many good ones.
They got to cut somebody that's so good.
Yeah, they got to cut somebody.
Exactly.
That's the problem.
If Demko was playing, that would have been another one for them.
Right. What's up with Demko, Ray? Like, you're out there. How does the market react to this story?
They'd react a hell of a lot different if Kevin Lankinen wasn't amazing so far this year.
Right.
Just think of that. They got Lankinen just at the start of training camp. I don't even think he's making $2 million. And
no, he's not.
And he's been unbelievable. Like, he's had a couple of clunkers, but just been amazing. The Canucks are, here they are. I saw a thing today. They're 10th in the league, tied for 10th in points percentage, and they've not had a great start, right? They haven't had Demko. Besser missed 7 games. Miller's out. Who else am I missing?
Pedersen had a slow start.
Pedersen was brutal for 10 games. He's been great of late. They've been a mess for health-wise. For a team that didn't have any real injuries last year, they've got slaughtered in the first quarter. And I would say Kevin Lankinen has been the story out here. So nobody's really talked a lot about Demko's absence because there's always this thought of, man, if we just get to when he's back. And so I think he's within a week. That seems to be all the reports. He's practicing hard. And then they've got 2 of those afternoon goofy Thanksgiving games, 12:30 tomorrow in Buffalo and 1 o'clock in Detroit on Sunday. And I don't think they would play those. Then you finish the trip in Minnesota. So maybe when he comes back home is where he is. But I mean, he's a difference maker when.
Oh, he's a great player, and he's their number one, and he's getting paid, and he's going to have to jump on a moving train here, to your point, because Lankinen allowed him to step into a spot where they're winning and they're in a playoff spot. Yet it also is going to put that much more pressure on him, which was probably inevitable anyway. And it could be worse, as you're saying, if they were 6-7 points out of a playoff spot, then it's all on you. But he's going to have to come back. If he has a slow 5-6 starts and he's getting caved in or getting pulled, man, that's going to be tough for him. This will be a challenge for Demko to make sure he's ready. And when he is, he better play well. They need him.
Well, I mean, Noodles would know better than us, but how could he come back and be dominant right away? No camp, no exhibition.
When is the when, Ray? When is he going to play a game?
I think next week.
Really?
Yeah.
He's not going to play. Do I promise? Well, that's like saying, you got 100 yards in, you got your wedge, your comfy little wedge. Do you promise to put it within 8 feet?
I've just found the updates have been I'm fascinated by the guy because Noodles it's not hard, not because Noodles likes him. He's an unreal goalie and he's a guy you want in the league. And the updates have been crazy for almost it seems like forever. He's going to take shots. He's going to take morning skate.
Day-to-day stuff.
Exactly. 3 weeks later, day-to-day.
A day-to-day. He's going to take shots. He's going to okay. How about just tell us when he's back?
Well, that's the biggest thing. Ray, I remember, going out to Edmonton, whatever. I think I was in Vancouver. Was it Game 5 or something? And he was took morning skate. Like it seems like he's one practice away from being one practice away, and like that's the biggest frustrating thing from the outside of the market. Obviously, you talk to somebody in that market, they know the complexity of the injury now. Like I've had people say it's the flux capacitor in his right knee, or you're like, what the hell are you even talking about? But because it's such a unique injury, and the market obviously cares so much about him because he's a key piece. But it is, from the outside, we're all just like, okay, let us know when he's playing, because poor Talk goes out there and goes, really hard practice. We're hoping that he play this week, and then it's another week, and it's like Berube's doing the same thing in Toronto. Like he's talking, he's day to day. Matthews is in Germany, like wasn't even in the country.
It's going to be tough day to day. It's a long trip, long commute.
No kidding. Yeah, I mean that's been the consistency up here, I guess, and. We're at U.S. Thanksgiving, Ray, and this has always kind of been considered that artificial timeline for when you either put up or shut up. Is there a team or two that you can think of on either end of the spectrum where you're either surprised where they are at, positively, negatively, or any team you're circling where you're thinking, okay, I think this will turn around one way or the other?
Well, I mean, like a lot of people, I guess I was looking at Colorado most of the first bit of the season, and their goaltending is incredibly I don't even know what you call it.
It's
like
bonkers,
we're such a good
man.
team, I don't even know how the hell they're doing it. Yet I look at their team, I'm like, they're just too good. I don't. They're what are they? I just looked up here. They're the first in the wild card. Like I was worried about them. I don't. I think Calgary will drop off because I think their leading scorer's got 15 points. Like, eventually that's, isn't that going to catch you somewhere along the way? I do think Edmonton will be fine. The Rangers I'm really curious about because they got a good record, right? Like the record's fine, but they haven't played like their record for some time now. And now they're giving up goals like crazy, and, the jury puts that memo out to the other teams, like kind of, like they're a team I would look at and be slightly concerned about. Nashville, of course, like that.
How about last night again? Like Morgan Frost scores with 12 seconds to go and they lose in overtime.
Yeah.
It's just not worked for them. Like they spent over $100 million in the summer, and it's just not worked. And I think I just think I look at the roster; it's not balanced out enough. They got too many guys that play the same position.
No kidding. Like, Trotzy's got to own some of that. Don't just look right at the coach. It's like you put together possibly wrong – well, not possibly, wrong pieces.
Well, you got three right-handed guys, for example, that all like to play the same position, and that gets crowded.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you're like – and then they sign Brady Shea, and it's funny. I would be – this might sound weird. I would be a little cautious – signing players out of Carolina because they may be as good as anybody with identifying players that fit in Rod's system better than anywhere else. And I don't know if they fit the same when they leave, like when they go somewhere different. Like you look at Carolina brings in a guy and like they bring in Eric Robinson and you're like, yeah, whatever, grinding for it. Oh, he looks great there. Like, is Jordan Martinook the same player anywhere else? I don't know.
Yeah.
But damn, he's good there. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter who they – Noodles, I'm almost certain you could pick up a couple of wins there.
Yes.
Well, Ray, what you need is maybe
might.
Patrick Waugh coming out and making a comment that this is the team the GM gave me. Have you ever heard that in your life?
Like, how short is the plank? Because it just lost a couple of boards right there.
I kind of like it, though, man. It's just Patty Waugh's got, like Hayes said earlier, he's got money, he's got Hall of Fame. Like, he's just like, this is what I got, man. This is what he gave me. Do you remember earlier when they sent, what's his name down there, Engvall?
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, Lou thought he would be a good player for us. Like, he's totally distancing himself from all
Lou
of that.
thought he was going to be a good player.
Yeah. But that's where I said it earlier. There's a disconnect there because Matt Merton is all of a sudden back, and Patrick's like, he's giving me these players, and it just seems like Lou's putting the players in front of him, and Patrick's going, okay, if you want me to play them, I will. And his comments are flat out like, hey, we're working hard, but cryptically, he just said we're just not good enough, and he flat out
That's
basically
the biggest
said
one for me. We work so hard.
Yes, I love these guys. We work so hard.
Yeah, but we can't play. We can't win, and that's basically go talk to Lou. I don't know, man. That's going to be an interesting dynamic moving forward.
Well, they've got two players. If they really drop out of it, and I mean they're not exactly in it right now, but they're only like 4 points out of the wild card stuff. But if they drop out of it, they got two free agents coming up at the end of the year that I think would be really attractive to good teams, and that's Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri. Mm-hmm. Like, they might not be the biggest name out there, but I'm like, those guys can play. And as it gets closer to the deadline, if they decide, we're going to trade and, try and accumulate a couple of assets, I would think those two would be really interesting adds for a team.
Yep. I think you're onto something there. Although with Lou, you never know. He may be a buyer at the deadline. I mean,
good point.
Anything's possible. All right, Ray, we'll let you get back to Giants-Cowboys. Try to enjoy yourself.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to pull myself away to watch a grade 9 basketball game later this afternoon. I'm sure that'll be 32-26 will be the final of that one. You know how those games go, right?
Box out, man. Just box out. That's all
clang,
that matters.
Clang, clang, clang.
That's right. Get your rebounds and move up court. That's the play. Enjoy it. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you doing this.
All the best, you guys. Great to talk to you again.
You too. There's Ray Ferraro joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Check out Maple Toyota's huge truck and SUV lineup, including Tundra, 4Runner, Highlander, and Grand Highlander in stock and ready to deliver. Visit mapletoyota.com. Mark Masters will join us. He's obviously traveling with the Leafs. They lost last night, back in action on Saturday against Tampa. Masters Nation coming up in about a half an hour. Probably a little trivia down there. U.S. Thanksgiving, I would think, in South Beach. A little South Beach trivia.
If he went to trivia last night, I'd completely lose hope on him as like a guy that likes to have any fun.
Yeah. Wednesday night before Thanksgiving in Miami.
Dude, you saw the pics, like everyone in the States back at their old like watering hole. Like it was electric. Yeah. It's an electric vibe.
Yep. You got it. You got to soak it in, man. You've got to take advantage.
You just put on a winter, like kind of a fall jacket and a scarf, and you get outside and you walk around, and it's electric.
I love it.
Yeah.
I just got an update from JP that Drew Lock just threw a pick 6, allegedly.
Oh, no.
And it sounds as if the Cowboys are about to take a lead. 13-7 Cowboys. Drew Lock with a pick 6 early into the second quarter. All right, Masters Nation.
I know that guy sounded too good to be true. Like I knew it.
Oh, you know he's not pulling out a win for the New
Come
York
on,
Giants.
dude. You can always hope, but then you just realize he's not doing it.
Although it's early, and you realize also the Cowboys could fumble this. Believe me, there's a lot of football left for this to turn back the other way. So we'll track that game, and my list coming up. And some details that came out of the list. I'll tell you about some of the details, all right, to tease up until next hour. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 now up on TSN 2. OverDrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Cowboys 13, Giants 7. Drew Lock, pick 6. And the Giants it's 4th and 20 from their own 38. They will be punting. So the Cowboys are in a decent spot there. Earlier this afternoon, the Lions beat the Bears 23-20, and the Lions had a great start. And then the second half, credit to the Bears, they came alive. Their offense really picked up. Their defense started making stops.
Didn't you shoot a text like you said this game should be 30-0?
Should have been. It should have legitimately been 21-0, and it was 13-0 because the Lions, I think, went field goal, touchdown, field goal. And they were chugging on all 3 drives. Like, it should have been touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. And there were a couple of, like, basically goal line stops by the Bears. And they kept themselves in it. And as a result, they allowed themselves to get back and at least cover the number, which is big for Hazenbrough, not so big for Owen Wilson.
You think the Lions have a realistic, like, greatest show on turf kind of vibe, can get it done?
I think they can in the NFC. I think my thing is the top end teams in the AFC scare me more than what Detroit's going to have to deal with in the NFC. I think the Eagles are pretty good. I think Minnesota's pretty good. I think Green Bay's pretty good. And then no one else scares you. But those three teams, the Eagles, the Vikings, the Packers, let's say you're the Bills, right? Let's say using the Bills as the AFC equivalent. The Chiefs, the Ravens, the Steelers would scare me more collectively than those three teams I mentioned from the NFC. So I think it's just an easier path. Like, they're 11-1 now. They probably end up with the top seed. You can have a bye in the wild card, home field. Having home field for, like, you talk about the best show on turf, that's what they're dealing with, right? It's in a dome. It's a controlled weather. They never have to deal with the elements.
Right.
I think the Lions are in a very good place in the NFC. I don't know if they'll win the Super Bowl if they get there, because I think they'll play a Buffalo or a Baltimore or Kansas City. I'm not even sure they'll be favored in that game. But they're in a good place, and they're a likable team. And it says something about your history. The reason you're likable is because you were so bad for so long.
Sorry, wrong.
That's the truth.
Wrong. I know,
Truth.
but think about the comparison that there is where you live. Do you think if the Maple Leafs went to the Stanley Cup final, it would be they're so likable because they haven't won in so long?
No, of course not.
People would hate watch the Leafs if they made it that far. Hate watch.
Valid. 100% valid and true. I think the Leafs and their profile a little bit different. The Leafs have been a somewhat competitive team at times. They did go to the conference final in 93, 94, 99, 02. Like, Detroit hadn't won a playoff game in 30 years. But I understand what you're saying, and you're right. It might partially be the market. I think Dan Campbell's a guy. Like, Jared Goff's not a guy that anyone really has a feeling for one way or the other. It seems like a decent guy.
You guys hated him for the longest time, didn't you? Always Jerry Goff.
I've always loved Jerry Goff. But Jerry Goff, dude, he's an unknown to a casual NFL fan.
In many ways, and that's what I'm saying. I think what we didn't like about him in the past is he would screw us on bets, Noodles, but that's not his fault necessarily. And that it wasn't like his personality rubs you the wrong way. He just kind of goes about his business. But I do think there's an element of almost – not pity, but hey, good for you guys. This is great, which almost speaks to how bad it's been in Detroit for so long. But now Chicago holds the reins. Like, that's what stings for the Bears is you always had the Lions. Bears haven't won since '85, but they could always look down on Detroit and say, at least we're not that. Right. Now the Bears are what the Lions were within the division because Green Bay's consistently good. Detroit's very good. Minnesota's been pretty consistently good. And at the end of the game, if you saw it, you know what we're referencing. If you missed it, the Bears were down by 3. They were chugging down the field. They had a timeout left. They took a bad sack. Instead of calling a timeout, they ran a play, and it didn't work for them. They end up losing the game, and Matt Eberflus is taking a lot of heat. He was asked about it after the game. We have the audio and the video. You guys ready to hear it?
I can't wait to hear it.
Matty Eberflus on his reaction to what happened at the end of the game. Earlier
we're there at 2nd and 20, take the sack right there. And, so we're at 36 seconds right there. And our hope was, because it was 3rd going into 4th, that we would re-rack that play at 18 seconds, throw it in bounce, get it into field goal range, and then call the timeout. And that's where it was, and that was our decision-making process on that. Again, we were outside the field goal range, so we needed to get a few more yards in there, as close as we can get, and then we're going to call timeout. And that's why we held that last time out at the end of the game. So, like I said, disappointing for the players. They put a lot of work in a short week and put themselves in position to win that game.
All right. And I think he went on to say,
on the quarterback.
I made the right call. I think he basically said later in the clip that I believe I made the right call.
Who was our buddy for the Browns that said, bad call? That was a bad call. Remember that guy?
What was his name again, man?
He had a real, redneck coach name. Just after the game, he was like, bad call, bad call.
That was when they ran a draw on 4th and 9 or whatever.
And he was sweating, and his face was red, and he had, chewing tobacco in, and he was just like, bad call.
Who was that guy?
That's name. Right. It was like Rich or something. It was Ricky or something. wasn't it?
It was a redneck coach name. I forget it. It was like Bubba or something.
Doogie, find out that guy's name. You're right, because it was early in the Baker Mayfield era. Yeah. It was Baker's second or third year. And I remember the play vividly. They ran a draw on like 4th and 9, and no one could believe it. Like the defense just stuffed the run, and
he got out in front of the mic and he was like, "Bad call,
bad call,
yeah, bad play call, bad, yeah."
Yeah, that was it. And I don't think that was like a Patrick Waugh scenario. That was basically him looking in the mirror.
Yeah,
saying,
and he's like,
I
can't believe I pulled the trigger on that call.
I allowed that call to be made. Freddie Kitchens was his name.
Freddie Kitchens.
What a great handle.
What a handle he had. He had a barrel on him and a beard, and he was just something else. Freddie Kitchens.
Fred Kitchens. 4th and 9.
Bad call.
Play it again.
Bad call.
No, you need the viz. We need the viz of that cat for next hour, just to go to it, just to get a laugh.
Because he's chewing gum or he's got a dip in or something, man. He's so bent out of shape. Because they were a bad team, and he knew he was in trouble, and that was a Matt Eberflus moment. All right, we'll find the video. We'll play Freddie Kitchens. Mark Masters coming up. We're tracking the football game. We'll tee up the game tonight. The Raptors with a big win. They won huge last night in New Orleans. So credit to them and the way they're at. At least they got themselves a win on the road. Shout out to the Raps. Yeah. Took a while, right? We're almost into December, but they got themselves a win on the road.
Got it done.
I got my list coming up. Dear
Can't
Hazy
wait
B.
for your list.
The Hazy B list. I got a list for you. I got a lot of different layers and details.
Dude, I told you we could have committed an hour to
I
this.
could do an hour on this.
I know.
I could do an hour easily on this. Honorable mentions. I have 5 or 6 honorable mentions that will make your head explode.
Make sure we got plenty of time. We can't just squeeze in like 4 minutes for this.
I will let this one breathe.
Did Marlowe to Carolina for Jarvis make it?
It's honorable mention, but that's an important one that people forget because
that is,
dude, that trade, Marlowe and a first for cap relief that turned into Seth Jarvis is just a crushing trade. Crushing
stuff, man.
And that's an honorable mention. So that's one that came up. All right, so we'll get to that into the next hour as well, and our best bet still to come. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, Mark Masters coming up in about 15 minutes. Hazy B listing at 6:30, about 6:20 for this one, right? And I think it's important that I also, at some point in the next few weeks, do the 5 best trades in Maple Leaf history.
Of course.
There's been great trades that have worked out for them.
Dougie
Gilmore's at the top. I mean, I think most people can see that Gilmore trade is just an all-time great trade. I think the 3 at the top of the list for Toronto sports is the Kawhi trade, the Alomar trade, the Gilmore trade.
Yes.
Those are the 3. And they were all just spectacular deals that led to the building of legends within the city, and 2/3 of them led to championships, and Gilmore did everything he could 93 and 94 to do the same. Just unreal trade. So, yeah, I'll get to that too. There's a positive spin on this. There's also draft picks that panned out. I could do that. That's what stood out to me, kind of doing some research last night. You know, there's obviously a lot of famous players that got picked using the Maple Leaf pick. Right, Scott Niedermayer being at the top of that list.
Tommy Kervers, that was tough.
Yes,
so bent on that one.
That one's coming up, and Roberto Luongo got picked, obviously, with a Maple Leaf pick, and that one's coming up. But there were some names that I was not aware of that got picked with a Leaf draft pick that they traded.
Oh, no.
Like, let me give you one. I had no idea this guy was drafted by the Maple Leaf pick. Now, to be fair, to an extent, the Leafs had flipped this pick to one team, and then that team flipped it to another team.
Okay.
That team was the Nashville Predators, who selected Roman Josi with the Maple Leaf pick. I was not aware that Roman Josi technically got picked with a Maple Leaf pick.
Oh, that's another hole. That's a
Roman
whole
Josi.
Rabbit hole.
That hurts.
Man.
I saw that last night for the first time. I grabbed my chest. I was like, oh, my. Another one I wasn't aware of, our boy, we just saw him last week, Mike Camilleri. Cammy was drafted with a Leaf pick for your boy, Aki Berg.
No.
Aki Berg came to the Leafs so that Mike Camilleri could spread his wings in L.A. That's the truth. Seth Jarvis. I'd go on forever. That's
Aki
what I was
Berg
doing
was-
last night. That's what I was doing last night. I was
Please
Niedermeyer,
don't tell me
Luongo.
they traded the actual Mike Camilleri, just the pick.
The pick
pick.
that LA used to pick Mike Camilleri.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ooh.
Seth
I don't
Jarvis.
know. I don't know if I'm mentally prepared for it.
This you could actually create an all trade away pick team, and they would be close to Hall of Fame worthy.
That's
type of thing,
what's
wouldn't it?
Hall of Fame goalie, 2 Hall of Fame defensemen. Niedermeyer's in. Yossi's going. Yossi's going in the Hall of Fame. So
Yes.
a Hall of Fame goalie in Luongo, 2 Hall of Fame defensemen, and then you could make a line: Seth Jarvis, Tyler Seguin, Travis Konechny, all Leaf picks. Mike Camilleri's on the second line.
What do you mean, Travis Konechny?
Yeah, I
They
didn't
traded
know
that
that
pick. They traded back in 15. They had the 4th pick and the 24th. They took Marner with the 4th. They traded back from the 24th back so Philly could move up and take Konechny with their pick.
Dude, they did that in Florida a bunch of times, didn't they?
And they took Jeremy Bracco and they took Dermott instead of Travis Konechny. They said, you go ahead and you have Konechny. We'll move back because we're going to take Jeremy Bracco.
That was an analytics play where it's this value of this, and we're going to
That's
trade
right.
and get 2. That's
That's exactly. And Philly said, "We'll move up and take him." You're kidding me?
Yeah.
Konechny's still on the board. He was the captain in Ottawa.
That was the big analytics play. We want these 2 picks instead of the 1. And
That's
it was
right.
I don't know.
That's right. We already have Marner in the bank. We're good here. And they could have walked away with Mitch Marner and Travis Konechny in the same draft. And they chose not to. So that's what my night was like last night. So more on that into the next hour. We have the Freddie Kitchens Viz. We'll play it. Mark Masters coming up. Al's brother with another clue, the final clue of the week in terms of his whereabouts. Final hour coming up. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2.